So the reality is, if these people are guilty of such crimes, then perhaps what the UK could do is follow in the footsteps of Muslim countries like Saudi Arabia regarding how to deal with them. Bismillah walhamdulillah wa salatu wassalamu ala rasulillah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome all viewers. Today I want to talk about this issue of grooming gangs out of the UK. This is a topic that specifically Elon Musk of X has been constantly posting about. And specifically, I want to talk about this tweet, which he reposted, because I think it really symbolizes the reality of what's going on. Now, firstly, I want to mention that when it comes to criminality, period, especially the abuse of children, of course, myself and Islam itself calls for the law to be implemented, for people to be held to account for what they're doing, and thus for the population to, inshallah, be safe. So to whatever extent the UK failed their population in holding criminals to account and trying to protect their citizens, then this is something that should definitely be corrected. And this is something that's very sad to hear and unfortunate and devastating. However, as we can see here, these devastating crimes are being used as a political tool to clearly push an anti-Islamic agenda. Elon Musk has clearly showed his disdain for Islam and for Muslims. And it seems like he's doing his best to spread this disdain and this distrust and this negative view of Muslims as much as he can on his platform. And so much of this information is outright lies. So for example, this image in and of itself, it shows a Tesla Cybertruck burning outside of a Trump hotel. Now, of course, this is the event that happened in Las Vegas. However, eventually it came out that the person who was responsible for that Tesla exploding wrote a letter telling Americans to rally behind Donald Trump and Elon Musk. So according to that letter, this wasn't done in the name of Islam. This person wasn't a Muslim. He was a supporter of Elon Musk. He was doing it to tell people to rally around Elon Musk. So not only is this a complete misrepresentation of this event, but ironically, it actually had to do with Elon Musk himself. But what does this article say? Islamism ruined Britain, don't let it ruin America. So this is a narrative that many people are pushing now, that Islam, Muslims, they ruined Britain. Britain is now ruined. Why? Because of the Muslims, because of Islam. And then that's being used to fearmonger here in America, telling Americans, don't let Muslims, don't let Islam ruin America like it ruined Britain. And aside from this inaccurate image they're using to sort of spread this fear, the other thing that they're using is the story regarding the UK grooming gangs. For example, you can see Ayan Hirsi Ali, who, by the way, her entire career is based on bashing and lying about and misrepresenting Islam and Muslims. That is what she has dedicated her entire life, her entire career to. She says, the dam appears to have broken on this most shameful chapter in Britain's history, where children were sacrificed by politicians to avoid inflaming racial tension. So what does she mean by children being sacrificed? This is in reference to the grooming gangs. And the claim is that the politicians in Britain, they didn't hold these criminals to account because they didn't want to inflame racial tension. However, this is now being used to do the absolute opposite. Now, rather than just being balanced and trying their best to hold the criminals to account and protect the citizens, they're trying to inflame racial tension. They're trying to demonize Muslims and Islam and act as if by inflaming these things, this is how we're going to protect our citizens. And it's quite interesting because Elon is going as far as calling for the king to dissolve parliament over the grooming gangs. And if you browse through his feed, you will see that he is like nonstop talking about the grooming gang situation in the UK. And again, I am not here to ever defend criminality or abuse, especially towards children. However, this goes far beyond that. This is obviously politically driven, and it is being used to demonize Islam and Muslims. So that being said, I want to actually talk about how Islam and Muslims deal with this sort of criminality. And perhaps, since people like Elon Musk, they have all these suggestions regarding what the UK government can do to punish such criminals and to deter such criminality, I'm hoping that perhaps they can take some notes regarding how Saudi Arabia deals with such criminals. Now, this is an article from a newspaper in Saudi Arabia, and I have a translated version of it that I'm going to read from. The title of the article is Judicial Rulings in Favor of Children. Recent data released by the Ministry of Interior over the past 2 weeks regarding the enforcement of Sharia rulings against several offenders in different regions highlights the judiciary's and legal system's significant focus on protecting children. This was evident through the imposition of severe penalties against perpetrators of crimes targeting this vulnerable group. Okay, so if anyone ever wants to try to make you think that this sort of behavior of abusing children, grooming gangs is from Islam, is it in any way, shape, or form from the religion of Islam, something that Muslims are okay with, then remember this article and remember how they deal with this sort of criminality in places like Saudi Arabia. I lived in Saudi Arabia for over 8 years, and it was the most peaceful place that I've ever been. But unfortunately, as we can see in this article, crimes still occur. Everywhere on planet Earth, there are going to be criminals, there are going to be crimes. And they too have foreigners who came into their country and committed terrible crimes. Here it talks about luring children. According to the announced data, a discretionary death sentence was carried out in the eastern province against a foreign resident who was proven through Sharia evidence to have lured 2 children. And I'm not even going to read the specifics about the horrible things that was done. Similarly, in Jeddah, a discretionary death sentence was executed against an offender found guilty. And this was against a foreign resident who was proven to have lured several children and forcibly committed terrible acts against them. The article says stricter punishments. Saudi courts, based on numerous rulings and judicial precedents, have established that crimes committed against children warrant harsher penalties. In some cases, these penalties escalate to hudud punishments, fixed Islamic penalties, when the required Sharia conditions and criteria are met. Alongside this, the anti-abuse law, the child protection law, which you can read on their website, they have a translated document you can download, and the anti-harassment law work together to reinforce and uphold the protection of children, the most vulnerable group. Former judge and lawyer Abdul Karim Ashemari explained that the strict punishments for crimes against children are due to the fact that children in particular lack the means to protect themselves from danger. Furthermore, they are the most vulnerable to exploitation due to their limited awareness and lack of protective tools, leaving them susceptible to abuse, mistreatment, and harm. Additionally, the imbalance of power between the offender and the victim further justifies imposing stricter penalties. Ashemari added that Saudi lawmakers have introduced a set of regulations criminalizing all forms of abuse against children. Capital punishment. Judicial practice has consistently enforced the death penalty as a had punishment for anyone proven guilty of rape. And this is another example of how Elon Musk spreads fake news, because here he is bringing attention to the fake news that there's something called revenge rape in Sharia law, claiming this is the culture that brought the grooming gangs to the UK. No, there's no such thing as this in Sharia law. But rather, what did we say? Judicial practice has consistently enforced the death penalty as a had punishment for anyone proven guilty of rape. These crimes are classified as acts of corruption and mischief on earth due to their nature, involving force, coercion, and harm. Execution is only carried out after conclusive proof through Sharia-compliant evidence. This approach ensures the protection of fundamental societal values and maintains public safety by imposing severe punishments. When definitive evidence is presented, conditions are fulfilled, and legal barriers are absent. So the reality is, if these people are guilty of such crimes, then perhaps what the UK could do is follow in the footsteps of Muslim countries like Saudi Arabia regarding how to deal with them. This is not from Islam. Muslims don't approve such behavior, and in fact, as we mentioned, there are severe consequences for such behavior. Allah knows best. Thank you for watching. jazakumAllahukhairan. Subhanaka Allahumma wa bihamdika ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilaik. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.